Hey everybody, it's the Commodore from the Clan of the Grey Wolf, and you are watching the weekly Wringer series here on clanofthegreywolf.com. Now, we're going to follow up with last week's great conversation with another one for this week. A lot of cool ideas out there that I want to talk about, stemming from the question I asked you last week, which was about Adult Swim. And there were a lot of cool things that came out of the conversation, a lot of things I want to tell you about that I did during the course of the week to kind of get up to snuff on what was going on with Adult Swim and the history and so on and so forth. But we'll do what we always do, run through your comments, kind of get to mine as well, and then I want to get to a question for next week, which I think really gets us in a place where we have to ask video game developers about how they make the games that they make. I think it's going to be an intriguing question for you guys. I think you'll knock it right out of the park. So, before we get into any of that, as I always do, I want to introduce our new people to the program. We had 3 new folks commenting this week, and it's great to have all 3 of you. Very glad to have you on board. First off is Zola. Welcome to Zola. I think that's a pretty cool name. Actually, I thought really good contributions from all of our new commenters this week. So it's not even just unique. I think it's great comments from all of you. So Zola, welcome to you to the conversation. Tinfoil Poet. Interesting concept. Never really thought of how that way might come out. But in any case, it's great to have you on board as well. Tinfoil Poet, welcome to the community. And last but not least, Gilgamesh 909. Welcome to you, Gilgamesh 909. I mean, Gilgamesh is a pretty awesome hero. You know, I'm not sure if there's any kind of specific reference to that you're playing on, but in any case, welcome to the community. It's a badass name, and I'm glad to have you on board. So welcome to all 3 of you. Great to have you in the community, and love to see what you guys are going to come up with in the future for Weekly Ringers far beyond into the Great Nether. All right, so let's talk about the question from last week. The question I gave you guys last week was about, and I thought about this after I asked it and after I started seeing some of the first replies. I kind of got a little bit upset with myself because I asked a question that was, in court would have been objected to, right, immediately, because it's like that question, when did you stop beating your wife, right? That implies that you were beating your wife and that there's no question about it, right? It's a direct question to to someone that directs them in an area that a normal question shouldn't. A question should be rather open-ended. So I kind of implied that it ever had Mojo, which probably was a little bit of a mistake in terms of Adult Swim. So when I asked you guys, has Adult Swim lost its Mojo, I basically implied that it initially had it and then it lost it. And when did it lose it? And or has it lost it? And I think you guys did a good job of kind of roping me back in, and I think even though I presented a little bit of a bias toward what I thought the answer might be, I was surprised to see that there were a lot of answers that were deeper than that and kind of reined it back a little bit and didn't necessarily jump right onto that. So let me jump in with this. I think there are 3 basic sentiments in response to the question that I asked. The first one is that Adult Swim never had any Mojo, so it couldn't have lost it. So it wasn't really ever that great, and therefore it never really had the Mojo that I was implying that it had. Okay, fair enough. Number 2, absolutely, it's completely lost its Mojo. An old iteration of the lineup consisting of blah, 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 blah was great, and now it sucks. And there were several of you that had that kind of a sentiment as well. And the third line of argument that I saw this week was, nope, it's maintained its quality. Even if it looks a little bit different, it feels a little different, it's still just as good as it's ever been, or just very close to as good as it's ever been at its peak. And those were the 3 general arguments that I saw from the community this week. And I have to say, I am open to all three of them. I think they're all very, very good points, and I think they have their merits. It's interesting, too. I want to say this before I jump into the individual comments. I can't believe this week, almost more than any other week that we've had here, how many times I would jump into a comment and go, that's exactly how I feel. That makes complete sense. And then I would read the rationale for the shows that you were talking about, or the particular programming block or the schedule that you spoke about, and it was completely a different justification. And I went, no, if I use that justification, I would completely change my mind. So this was an interesting week in terms of a question. I knew it would be kind of strange. Several of you have been asking me to talk about Cartoon Network, even though, yes, Mr. K, I do quite correctly really corrected me and all of us that Adult Swim really is actually a completely different independent network that actually shares the airtime with Cartoon Network at this specific programming block. So it's actually not part of Cartoon Network. In any case, it's interesting to see how all those things came together. And so even those of you that I was like 100% on board with, as soon as I saw your justification, I just went, oh, that's not at all what I would say that. But so maybe there's a point to be taken out of all of this. And as I always do, folks, don't worry, I will try to kind of pull that thread through everything we talk about today and through all the comments that I want to mention that you guys had. The point is, it's a very interesting fabric this week, and it's not always that way. A lot of times with some of the questions that I ask, it's very cut and dry. It's very much easier to kind of pull out what's happening. This was not that easy. All right, so I want to start out with the bow tie guy who got us kicked off this week talking about the fact, and see, I loved this point, and there's several of you I put in here that I saw a really cool point I wanted to bring out that I thought, this is great, this helps change the argument, this helps frame it up a little bit better. The bow tie guy talked about the idea that the core audience for Adult Swim has moved on. Now think about that. This of course implies, as my question does, that at some point Adult Swim did a good job of addressing its core market, and that now it does not. Or its core market has moved on, which I think I have a little bit of an understanding. I think I know what that means. It means they've moved on to other media or other genres or other channels or whatever the case might be, or they don't even watch TV late night anymore. I will be honest with you, the attempts that I could have at this point to be watching Adult Swim at 1 o'clock in the morning, especially on a weeknight, is very remote. That does not happen very much anymore, although it does happen. So the fact that I was up till 3 and 4 in the morning every single night in college certainly added to my ability to jump in and be a part of the Adult Swim community. Point taken, bow tie guy. What I also want to say, though, is that I think it's beyond the idea of the fact that maybe they ever did address their core audience. The fact that they had a core audience and that maybe they haven't been able to continually attract that audience or move to as that audience grew out, to be able to kind of maintain within that demographic that they were very strong in previously is, it speaks to the nature of what I was trying to get at with the question, which is, have they really addressed, or do they really resonate with the same demographic today that they did when they started, or has that demographic fundamentally changed? I think the bow tie guy feels like they've moved on, and it's kind of a different story now. They're not doing as good a job, so they have indeed lost their mojo. Good point. Mr. K comes out, never mincing words. It was never really that great, and I think that's very true. The other point that Mr. K made that I thought was really good is if Toonami is coming back in the way that it is, and I think it's making a very strong push towards some of the programming that that both Cartoon Network and Adult Swim should probably be looking to try to target. This is significant. This is meaningful. And I couldn't agree more. I think that makes a lot of sense. The fact that people are looking toward Toonami rather than Adult Swim to put the content that's geared toward folks like us on their network is very significant. It makes a ton of sense, right? That means that they're kind of missed the boat, that they're not really hitting it very well, and that we're trying to look in other places to really find out, or to find that audience, and to find that place, that kind of show to latch onto as the audience, for programming on these networks. And when you see more of the adult cartoons that have come out of late, or even some of the more nostalgic cartoons that try to play toward us, I think Toonami represents that kind of right in the middle place. It's got a lot of nostalgic stuff, and then they try to bring in some things that have a little bit of nostalgia to them, but they also try to, just show us what are more adult-oriented cartoons. And I think that's awesome. So maybe we're having a conversation really about how something like Toonami being able to be in a unique position to take over from Adult Swim means that Adult Swim has completely lost its mojo. I think it's a great point from Mr. K. DTX 180 talked about the idea of Adult Swim, which initially did not. Initially, Adult Swim was not a 7-day-a-week programming block. Initially, it was only a few days a week. I think only 2, actually. In any case, what that meant was that you would wait for the particular block to come up to even have Adult Swim, and for the rest of the time, you were watching infomercials or, Scooby-Doo reruns. So the point that DTX 180 is making, though, is that Adult Swim is not a 7-day block in terms of content. They don't have the kind of content that you need to be able to put it on 7 days a week. And if you look at most of the shows that Adult Swim produces in terms of originality, like, say, Aqua Teen Hunger Force or Metalocalypse, Squidbillies, any of these shows, they are almost all of them not on every night, or only a half of an episode, or a full episode one night, but that's it. There's no more kind of filling in. It's not like where they could show 2-3 episodes of Family Guy every night, or 2-3 episodes of Futurama every night, so on and so forth. And I think some of the significance of Adult Swim has really been there, right? If I'm looking at Adult Swim, I think the 2 greatest, okay, I can't say that. 2 of the greatest contributions that Adult Swim has made to pop culture are bringing Family Guy back on air and bringing Futurama back into production. And, obviously I was pretty excited about Family Guy, even though I'm not, as Mr. K is not, the largest Family Guy fan in the world. I actually think Family Guy became very unfunny for a very long time. But I've seen some episodes of late, and I have to say I laughed. I think they were pretty good. So maybe it's got its mojo back. Maybe there's another question for another time. Boom, boom, boom. But Futurama never missed a beat. If you watch some of the new Futurama episodes, I think they're just as funny as the old ones. I'm really glad to see that they got all the original cast together, and I just love the show. So at the very least, you have to give Adult Swim the significance of the fact that they brought the show back to life. There are these shows back to life by showing them to people and showing that there is an audience and there is a niche for them, and you just got to go play to them. I think that's fantastic. All right, let's talk about, but the idea that they lack the content for a 7-day block is important, right? Because at the end of the day, and this is DTX 180's point, if you try to stretch yourself a little too thin, it becomes something where you can't really engage the audience. They look for a little while and they go, okay, that's cool, but I'm done with that. I'm moving on. Mike KE352 says, yes, Adult Swim's lost its mojo, but some good things have happened as well. And I mentioned 2 of the things, in terms of saving Futurama and saving Family Guy, but let's also go toward what Mike is talking about here, which is anime. So, as you all know from my wonderful history with this sordid topic, I'm not necessarily the world's greatest expert on anime, nor am I the world's biggest fan of anime, much to the chagrin of many of you. But in any case, I think it's true. I mean, one of the things that some of the interaction I actually did have with anime was in those late night Counter-Strike gaming sessions in college, where I'd leave up Adult Swim and be kind of semi-engaging with some